Okay, everybody, hi, welcome. I'm sorry we had a bit of the Demio glitching on us, but we're starting now. So everybody, welcome. It's our third day of our 10-day, 10-year anniversary celebration. With me today is somebody you probably already know, Bill Perkins, who in the last 35 years worked in the animation and film industry on over 42 films, TV shows, video games, and DVDs. He also worked on titles that you might have heard of, like Aladdin, Oliver and Company, The Little Mermaid, Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Tangled, Frozen, Zootopia, and many, 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 many more. He is also an instructor at New Masters Academy since the beginning and now returning with his expertise as we unleash the new revamped coaching program. He also started being a coach again with us. So Bill, if you're fine, we're just gonna jump into questions, or if you wanna add anything, you can do so.
No, just happy anniversary. Let's get going and throw some questions out too. So give me your questions, and then we can kind of move through. And if there's anybody else that wants to jump in, have at it.
All right, then let's just start. But yeah, let's move into the questions now. So, Bill, how did you become interested in animation? If I remember correctly, you started off as a fine artist before entering the industry.
Yeah, I actually I went to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and my father. Well, I'll step back for just a second. My father was an art director in an ad agency. My mother was an artist, so art supplies were always around when I was a kid. But then when I decided I wanted to, well, I was helping my dad through high school and just out of high school, I would go in and help him in the office and stuff once in a while. So I got familiar with advertising, and then or what he was doing there, and I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to go into that business, family business. I'm going to go in there, and so I put a portfolio together, started Art Center, and out of 8 semesters, I got about through my 6th term, and then I just had the whole flash that, what am I doing here? Where am I going with this? And I just realized that I wasn't really in love with the idea of getting into advertising. So I took some time off. I took a year off to figure out what I wanted to do and what I loved to do. And I realized that I just loved to paint, and I didn't really have a commercial intention. It was just really more I wanted to paint. So I met some people that were selling paintings. I started down that track, went back to school to finish. And when I did, I went back, and something to kind of note there was, in school, like you guys, any of you guys been in school or whatever, with all the stress and pressure and peer pressure and stuff with the schools, I had all that. But then when I took a year off and I figured out what I love to do, I was also going to a lot of museums, and I started realizing that, my competition wasn't my peers in my classroom. My competition was the best of the best that ever been. The ones that are in the museum, that's my competition. And so I went back to school with a whole different point of view. Like, we're here to help one another. That's pretty much it. We're here to get better. And yeah, we're going to fail. We're going to bump our skin, our knees. We're going to do all kinds of stuff. And so we did. I came back with a little different attitude, which was a lot healthier. It was a really, really great. And so when I graduated from school, I wanted to kind of expand and get into better galleries and stuff. And so I started traveling and painting for about 6 years. I knew I needed to get into some good galleries, and I knew I wanted to go there. So I did that for about 6 years, and my career was growing really well, really fast, and I was very fortunate. But then we had to hit a recession, and the galleries started closing, and so my financial options weren't available. And I had just had put together a big show at a museum. I gathered a group of artists, and we got together and got accepted into a group show at a museum. And I realized, what would I do? That became the question: what would I do if I'm not doing this? And I realized that 2 things. One, I needed to get some kind of a job, and then I was exploring, after 6 years of painting by myself, I was exploring this idea of collaboration. And I realized you could do more, with a group of artists. You could, do something bigger. So that's when it was suggested to me about Disney. And they were starting up a new movie, and someone suggested, hey, why don't you go apply over there? So I did, and had an option to do either layout or background painting. And I had my own career in painting. I really didn't care about painting that much. I wanted to learn about filmmaking. And so I went in layout. So rather than background painting at the end of production, I was with layout up in the front of production, working with the director and the story department and stuff. So that was really exciting for me, and a great learning place. So that's kind of how I landed in it. It wasn't that I always loved movies, and I got called out once because everybody there at Disney was like, really diehard animation fans, right? And they wanted to do animations since they were little kids, and I just love movies, and so I was interested in learning how to make movies. And it was kind of funny. One of the directors I worked with, he paused in the middle of a meeting one time. He turned to me, he says, "Wait, you don't like animation?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't say that. I like making movies." And he goes, "Yeah, but you don't like animation." I'm like, no, I appreciate animation. I love what everybody's doing at it, but I want to make a good movie. So, that's how I kind of landed in there. And it wasn't after years of yearning to work in animation. It was really, I kind of fell into it.
That's very interesting. Wow. Uh, okay, so talking about projects and going into animation, what are some of your favorite projects you're proud to have been part of?
Oh gosh. I'll make one distinction. The things that I've been most proud of have not necessarily been the biggest box office. I think there's no, it doesn't relate to that. To me, it doesn't relate to it. And I think some of the things that I've been mostly proud of have been things that we had developmental breakthroughs, or we found a new way of doing something, or it was generally about the process and building the process and discovering new ways of doing things that became really interesting. Of course, the first one that I can remember was Little Mermaid, and during that production, everybody in the whole place, we had just finished Oliver and Company, and it was a case where on Oliver, it was a mashup of music, and it was, the story was there, and it was a mashup of music, and everybody kind of felt, it's got to be better than this. We got to do something better than this. And then Howard Ashman came in and pitched Little Mermaid to the whole team, and we were sold. It was like, all of a sudden, here's somebody with a really strong vision of taking, the history of Disney musicals, modern Broadway, and Vincent Minnelli and live action musicals, and mashing it all together and figuring out, what are the characteristics of this and how do you build a musical? And he explained all that. And it was really something, because from that moment on, it was like you go into work and you're right in the presence of the Holy Grail. Everybody just thought, this is it. This is a great moment. And it was a good year. We made those movies, we turned them over one a year. Oliver and Company, Little Mermaid, Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, they were all turned over in 1 year. So they were all back to back. And but it was really, really exciting to be in that kind of a mindset. Looking back at the movie now, artistically, it's not, wonderful, but it did get inducted because of its historical value. It did get inducted last year into the National Archives, so we're all really proud of that. So, but that was on that one. The following movie was Rescuers Down Under, that wasn't a financial success, but it was the first digitally composited movie, and it was the first one that, it totally changed our jobs, and we were working with technology in a whole different way. And we were drawing on multiple levels of paper and trying to create the illusion of real space, and so we had to think differently and draw differently, and really kind of move into more of a a cinematic world, which was really, really exciting. That was a really big thing. And at the end of that one, we had done 56 minutes, I think 56 minutes, just under an hour of digitally composited film. And during that time, we couldn't tell the public at that time. The only other thing out there was James Cameron did Terminator 2, I believe it was, and the cinema magazines were all saying there was 5 minutes of digitally composited film, and we had just done 10 times that, and we couldn't say a word. It was pretty something. But and then Aladdin after that one, there were times on Aladdin where we were working in the compositing and trying to solve problems. And I remember vividly there was one time when, the visual effects department had done Fire, right? They animated Fire, and the lead wasn't watching too closely, and so these shots came in back to back, and the fire was drawn 3 different ways in consecutive shots. And so in the compositing, we had to make them all look alike. We didn't have time to redraw. We didn't have time to repaint anything. We had to take and reconfigure the parts to make it look. And we didn't have the tools at the time. They were just writing tools as fast as they could. And we finally had enough to just make a movie. And, and I remember, there were times, one time particularly, like 1:30 in the morning, I got up and I was walking down the hallway to get a cup of coffee. And I was thinking, we're puzzling out a problem, trying to figure out this fire issue. And I realized there's nobody I can ask. There's nobody that's done this before. There's nobody that's gone down this road. And and that's when I really thought, okay, that's where we should be. We're right where we need to be, kind of cutting edge. And that's the exciting part to me. That was kind of the exciting area because we were kind of pushing the barriers and stuff. And that was a pretty exciting thing. After that, I was over at Warner Brothers, and I got asked to go on to Space Jam because it was in terrible trouble and needed to be, the whole show had to be on the screen in 8 months. And we had done features in a year, and now we had to do one in 8 months, and nobody had done that before. And we ended up doing that with 16 studios around the world at the same time. So the tracking, all that kind of stuff was just, it was, everybody thought it was impossible. There were visual effects companies coming in and saying they were going to help us and do this and that and the other thing, and then promising the director and producer. And then as soon as the meetings were over, I'd go and say, okay, so let's sit down and talk about what you're going to do. And they would turn and walk away. They were just taking a paycheck and walking away. They didn't want to be a part of a failure. And when we pulled it off, that's when a lot of opportunities opened up for me personally, and a number of the people working on the show. There was a lot of the studios that looked over the fence and thought, no, they're never going to make it. They're never going to make it. And when we did, that was an exciting time for us. And then, like I said, there was, after that, different shows. I ended up working on a number of shows that were in trouble, fixing things. It kind of, some of the success of those things kind of launched me into that. So, after that, I went up to ILM. They were going to do a feature up there, and I went up there, and that didn't work out so well. They never launched the show. So I came back, started my own studio right about the time Disney Toons was starting to launch their home videos and sequels and all of that. And I got asked to art direct one of those, one of the early ones of those, with the outsourced studio in Tokyo. And I thought, I've art directed shows where I had the whole team right there, Space Jam that was scattered in all these other teams. And I thought, my question was, okay, how do you art direct a movie when you're not even there? How do you, and that became the challenge to me personally, because I have to find something that I personally get excited about on a project. And that was it. It was like, okay, how do I do this remotely when I'm not even there? So it really kind of came down to planning, having better planning. And I talked to a lot of people that had been doing TV and working on lower budget projects and seeing what they did, and trying to figure out how to make that work. So I had my studio because my kids were small. I wanted to be near the house. I didn't want to drive into a studio and be there all hours. I wanted to be nearby. Excuse me. So I had my studio for 7 years, and while they were going through school, and I was doing those. So I stepped back from the big features for a while for those years, and then I jumped back in over at Disney with Bolt and Zootopia and Frozen and those kind of shows.
Oh.
And I didn't work a long time on those. You know, I mean, those were fine. I didn't really work a lot on those. So they just kind of zipped by. You know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like hearing like the issues behind the stuff that some of us grew up with. It's interesting because we only see the final product, and yeah, it's quite
Yeah,
interesting to
yeah,
hear about
yeah.
that.
When you do see the final product, it's like, oh yeah, well that just came together, you know,
Yeah,
it doesn't explain
yeah,
the carpal tunnel, the divorces, the heart attacks, all the things that happened to all the artists along the way.
yeah.
So.
A lot of stress, dedication went into those projects. I assume. All right.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right. Let's move to another question. Is there any advice you can give for an aspiring animation student or artist trying to break into the business?
Yes. What I would say is take a look at wherever you are in the world. Wherever your center of animation is. I would say take a look at the production process. In Los Angeles, there's a union, and you can go on the union website. You can look at these are the different departments. And the mystery for a lot of students that or people wanting to get into the industry is like, okay, what skills do I need? Where do I fit? How do I fit into this whole thing? And when recruiters are out looking for artists, one thing to just kind of open up is they're not looking for the next best artist. They're not looking for the next great filmmaker. They're not looking for that. They're coming at you with a checklist. Right? Going, I need 2 layout artists. I need a prop person. I need 3 character designers. I need 4 background painters. So the best advice I would give is figure out what you love to do and how you fit into one of those departments, and then work hard on that and get in the door. Once you get in there, then you can kind of look around and say, maybe you find that you are finding an affinity towards something else or whatever within that team. But the main thing is don't try to do everything. Just focus on one thing that fills one of those requirements of one of the departments, and you'll have better luck getting in.
Right. I'll expand a bit more on this question. I believe people will want to know that. Since some people are from different countries, obviously not everyone is from America, and there's a lot of freelancers throughout the last couple of years. They're being more and more popular. Uh, do you think there's a difference, like getting your foot into the industry, being a freelancer, versus like, living closer to the studios, working on a certain project?
A lot of people are working remote, even here. Even here, I know some of the studios, this last year have said, okay, they want to bring people into the studio a little bit more. But the last couple of years, I've been working with Marvel, and they opened up an animation division during COVID. Everything was remote, and they proved that you don't need to have everybody local. And so they never did really build a facility. They have a space, but it's kind of an open conference room and a receptionist, and that's about it. And so people, I've had the pleasure of working with people all over the world on that show. Character designers in Argentina, and people in Spain and people in France. So it's been kind of exciting doing that, and people are working more remote. So again, when we hire people or look for different artists, we're looking for people to fill different skill sets. So that's why I kind of lean back into figure out what you love to do, and then it won't be a lot of work, because it won't seem like a lot of work, because everything you do is going to be hard. Everything you do is going to be a lot of work. So you have to find something you love to do, so it doesn't feel like it's, you want to get in, you want to do it, you want to get in and make that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. So everybody who was concerned about being freelance and not having opportunities, there definitely are. Okay, let's move
Yeah.
to another question. What role has mentorship or collaboration played in your career?
It's been really important, because I know early on, when my point of view has changed about it a little bit, because early on early on in my career, when I transitioned from more fine art into animation, I was continuing to go to like art class at night. I would I paint. I go to an outside studio or something and go paint one night a week or on the weekend or something like that. And so I kept that going. So that, I had my day job. I had I was learning film and stuff like that. But then at the same time, I could still keep my painting going. And then what I realized was, people started asking a lot of questions about painting and stuff like that. And so I thought, well, why don't I just start teaching a class? That'll make me responsible now, that I have to be there, that I have to come up with a lesson plan. I have to come up with like a framework or a learning guide. And that really helped me. And it helped me prepare me to become an art director as well, because that's something that, I think there's some other questions coming up about art direction too. I can expand on that a little bit, but yeah, I think as soon as I was doing that, and we were kind of learning on the fast track, because at Disney, and it was only a couple years in that I started working with a training program, and so we were training new people, because it was such a boom after Little Mermaid. There was such a boom in animation that people wanted to work. I mean, people want to work for a successful studio, and all of a sudden everybody wanted to work for the studio. And so we had to look at a training program. We had to look at, how do we bring people in and help them learn this craft. And so I was quite involved with that, and then remained involved with that in different studios. So it's been integral into the work.
Okay. Uh,
And I find that today too. In building teams for different things, there's a really strong value with having both having some experience. You got to have some experience on the team, but you also want to have new people on the team as well. Okay, and you want to have a few different points of view, and that makes a good team. You can't really just say, oh, all people that do this or all people that do that. You really need a little bit more of a broad base, and that way you can be bringing people along, because the whole idea is, you can set a bar as an art director. You can set a bar, but it has to be a bar that different artists at different skill levels can all meet that bar. So you don't want to lower the bar just so people can kind of catch up. You need to keep raising the bar, but you also need to give everybody a good foundation or instruction to get there. So you need to help them raise their bar. So mentoring and stuff is integral with building a team.
Nice. So who would you say at the moment, let's say at the moment, or throughout your artistic career, was your biggest inspiration, and why were they?
Painters. There's a few painters that I have to say were big inspirations. I think there was. I was really fascinated with Sorolla. I was introduced to his work when I was in school. Of course, Sargent and John Singer Sargent and some of those artists that were brilliant draftsmen and portrait artists and stuff were really great. And I had an affinity towards Impressionism too. So I really liked the Impressionist period. So I was kind of fascinated in that area. And then when I was introduced to Sorolla, his ability to capture sunlight and and point of view about what he was doing in his work. I thought was really fascinating. So that I would have to say that was someone as a in a world scale, that was someone. The instructor who introduced me to him, he he was Dan McCaw. We've remained friends for years and years, and he still remains an inspiration because he's always pushing his envelope. He's always doing that. And now his sons work with him, and they're all pushing each other. So, it's just so inspiring to see that going on. And the other inspiration was John Asaro. He was an instructor of mine when I was in college too. So his approach was really kind of unique and inspiring as well. So I would have to say, from the local artists that I had encountered, and then other world artists, I have to say some more of the Impressionists, and then some of Sorolla and stuff.
Okay. Wow. How does one build a lifelong artistic career? What would you say?
Don't slow down.
All right.
Just don't slow down.
To the point.
It really comes down to, yeah. You don't slow down. You kind of look at it. It's like if you chose to be an artist, you chose to be an artist, okay? And just figure it out. You chose to be an artist. It's a lifelong situation. It's a lifelong growth, and you're not going to stop. And the thing that a big benefit for me was working for the studios, where every movie you have to do so much research, and every movie is a total research project, and you're learning all kinds of things just to give truth to your story, and all the background things and the things to understand, both understanding about styles and stylistic changes and things like that, but then also things like I still remember things that I was researching for Little Mermaid. They come up all the time. It's like, what happens to color at 10 feet, 20 feet underwater? What happens to, lighting? What's artificial lighting compared to natural lighting underwater? The density of water to the density of air, and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff we needed to research. And so I still have that, in my head. And so from all these different movies and doing all the research, that's something that you want to stay on top of. And once you kind of get in the habit of that, you just realize whatever your endeavor is, research it, and keep discovering, keep learning things. And I'm doing that all the time. I'll have something. I have things that have bugged me in my art training from years and years ago. That why isn't there an answer to this? Why is this so vague? And it haunts me until I try to find an answer. And that still goes on today,
Yeah. So basically,
last weekend I was doing some research. Yeah, I was doing some research last weekend, and that research put a lot of things into perspective for me too. So I've got new things to offer, and it's like that's how you kind of keep doing it. I think you just love what you do and keep researching. So don't stop.
Yeah, so don't stop. Be curious and research. That's Those are the key points. Okay. What would be the first 3 things a visual artist should do to build a good base for their projects?
Observe. Okay. Observation. Work on your observation skills. Learn how to look at things, and when you go draw, if you're drawing from a model, don't just draw to copy. Go to draw to understand. Go draw the figure to learn the figure. And learn to draw. So you're learning to make marks that make an image, rather than just copy a figure or a still life or a landscape or whatever. But you want to look at things in a way that you're actually learning about them as you're recording them. And that's very different than just sitting down and copying, what you see. It sounds like a little shift, but it's a big gap. And when you practice your observation, while you're drawing, you're always working on your mechanical skills, your ability to draw what you see. But the main thing is work on your observation skills, and part of that is just live, just look closely at everything around you, pay attention to things, and get off your phone, and live a little bit, go look at things, go try things, go experience things, go, go a different road, take a different street, look at, see things differently, so, you want to just kind of explore those ideas and kind of stay fresh.
So observation. Okay.
Yeah, and then another thing happens too. Through your observation, what you're going to do is you're going to work on your mechanical skills, but then you're going to find also one of the things that I started doing with a lot of students, even early on, is I just kind of bring up your visual assessment skills. I look at that as a skill, and I call it visual assessment skills. But what that is your ability to look at your artwork and say, oh, this works, this doesn't work, right? To be have some self-judgment and develop an opinion or a vision for what you're doing. That takes some development. And what I've noticed is as artists mature, they seem to gain this confidence about, oh, this is what works, this is how I need to do it. Whether they use the same words or whatever, doesn't matter. But they're gaining this understanding and this way of putting things together. And I look at that as a visual assessment skill, your ability to look at things and break them down in a way that that you can elevate your work. You can say, oh, okay, well, this is working, this isn't, and build from there. So I think those are the three big things to look at.
Okay. One advice that you would give yourself if you could meet yourself back when you started drawing.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I knew there was going to be some tough questions.
There always has to
Thank
be
you for the tough question. I know. What kind of advice would I give myself? Wow. It's always going to be a struggle, but you're always going to love it.
That's a good advice.
That's pretty much it.
Love what you do.
It's always going to be a struggle. Yeah, but you gotta love it, and you can't be intimidated by that challenge. That's the thing. I know. We hear a lot of things about people that are talking about business and entrepreneurs and stuff, and they get, it's that 101st time that you get the acceptance after 100 rejections. Same thing in drawing, same thing in painting. You're going to make a lot of turkeys. You're going to make a lot of bad mistakes, but you can't let those intimidate you, because all those are building blocks. You're stepping over those mistakes to get better. So don't shy away from mistakes. Make big mistakes, and because they're easier to learn from. Excuse me. If you're nervous and timid about it, you're just going to tweak just a little bit at a time, and your growth is going to be pretty slow. But you kind of have to feel good enough about it's okay to make mistakes, that you can get in and really challenge yourself, and make a mess, and then stand back and look at it and go, okay, I made a mess out of this. How would I fix it? What would it take to fix this thing? And even working in under deadlines. I'll get a little off topic here, but it kind of relates. Working with some tight deadlines. What I'll often do is I'll get to a certain point with something and step back and go, okay, how do I finish this in like 3 moves or 3 to 5 moves? If I only have, 45 minutes to finish this, and I got to narrow it down to what is it going to take to finish this? That usually gives me a clearer vision of what is really lacking and what's really needed. And if I go in and hit those things right away, then the resolve can come fast. But to step back and say, what does it need to get finished, and how would I do it in just a couple of different moves? That's something that you can kind of do for yourself. That little intervention, stop yourself and look at it and go, okay, this is messed up, that's messed up, that's messed up. What do I need to do to fix it? And you can come up with some way of doing it.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to a few composition questions. How does one break away from relying on reference like a crutch and use it to fuel their own creativity?
Don't look at reference as finding the answer to your problem. Okay, meaning you want to do an image. Don't jump out there and start looking for images that tell your story. What you want to do is you want to start sketching. Get your idea down. Get your idea clear. And the clearer you have it in your head, and I even suggest write it down. Write down. This is what I'm going to do. And I tested this with a class one time. I give them a contract. I give all my students a contract. And the contract was just basically this: I blank, put your name, will endeavor to do blank, and you fill that in this painting, signed, and you put your name. Students would not do it. They wouldn't sign their own commitment to doing their own work. And I found that fascinating, that we don't want to commit to even our own ideas. And so that's something to kind of think about. So what that did for me is it just confirmed to me that what you need to do is be very clear about your idea. You can change your idea, but what you need to do is be clear about an idea, write it down, and make that statement in a couple of words. Say, there was 2 people in a boat on a lake. Okay, 2 people in a boat on a lake. And you're going to do that. And then once you sketch that, then you can go, well, what about those people? Is it more important about the lake? Is it the place of the lake? Is it the lake against the mountains? Is it going to be a story about the lake, a story about the people? That's going to propel you into doing more sketches and develop an idea. Once you have your idea developed through your sketches, then you go get the reference to resolve the drawing and painting issues. You're not looking at reference to answer your story problem. Okay, you want to sketch through that. You want to think through that. And in terms of reference, there is, if you're going to design new worlds, okay, it's a fantasy world, and there's, it could be on another planet, or it could just be a fantasy world here. One of the things that you need to recognize, or maybe it's a world seen through the eyes of some other creatures, right, or something like this. So what you need to do is build a convincing world. So yes, you have to be aware, and this is where your observation skills come in. Live a little bit, go experience life, go look at things, go analyze things, question things, because what you want to do is you want to take your experiences and then try to look at these things through your characters or whomever. Or if you're saying, okay, this is going to be take place on Mars. This is going to be a situation that's going to take place on Mars, and there's warring communities on Mars, right? So you have these guys and these guys, and they're stuck on this place, and there's certain gravitational issues, there's certain climate issues, there's these kind of things. If you take something that you relate to here, what we understand, and then twist it, what I found is that you can take an idea that exists, and you can take basically the parts. Say that there's a formula. It takes 3 parts to create this thing. You can take those 3 parts and replace them with other parts, and you'll end up with something inventive. For an example, aerial perspective, looking at how do you get aerial perspective in a scene when you're not painting it, okay, when you're not dealing with values. On Aladdin, we were looking at, I was working with I worked with a production designer he was a great painter, and he was working with a background artist. and getting their skill sets up, and they were painting. And I was focused on the design of the sets, locations, and things like that. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a sense of scale, space, and atmospheric perspective, even in the line drawing. So what we did was, it's like, okay, what's aerial perspective? It's a change of blank, okay? It's a change of blank over an equal change or exponential change over space, over depth. So I just used it as straight and curved. And everything close up was curved. As it goes deeper into space, it becomes more straight and more 90 degrees. So what happened was, drawing, a line drawing, you could see aerial perspective. So you see the condition of something that we're familiar with, but you change the parts. And now you have it a whole different thing, but it seems right. You look at it and go, yeah, that feels right. And you understand why it feels right. So, anything, that you have, anything that you do, you go outside and paint and say, okay, well, today there's a really blue sky, okay? And so the shadows appear really blue. Well, then on another day, there's an overcast sky. Why aren't the shadows blue? Right? Well, because they're reflecting from the sky. There's no blue sky available, so it's a more of a neutral kind of a situation. So that's might be a condition you might look at and say, oh, well, what if I want to make the sky green? Okay, well, where's the green going to show up? It's going to show up in the shadows because there's two sources of light, the sun and then the sky. So what color is the sun? What color is the sky? And then you put them together as we understand our sun and sky. And now you built a color relationship that feels like reality, but is totally different.
Science and art. Okay.
It's observation.
Yeah.
It's observation. Yeah.
Everything comes down to observing the world around us and putting that into the work,
Yeah.
be it fantasy or realistic thing. Yeah. Okay, so talking
Yeah.
about composition now, we have actually a live class coming up with Bill starting on the 25th of July, so pretty soon. I believe 13 days from now. It's called Composition for the Visual Artists, so it will be talking more about that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get into that because one of the things that I mentioned before about your visual assessment skills is really a case where, okay, when you look at your work, how can you tell what's working, what's not working? Okay, so if you understand our visual language, if you understand, our 7 components, you're looking at how we work with those components, and then how we actually apply a style to something. If you're familiar with those things, then you have a checklist to go through your work and say, oh, well, this is why it's not working, or that is why it's not working. If you're not familiar with those things, you don't know what to ask. You don't know the questions to ask to resolve your problems. But what we're going to go over is visual literacy, so that you have an idea of what are the things that all images need, and what's in those images, and how to break them down, so that you can, like I said, have a checklist, so you can say, oh, well, something's not working. You go down your checklist and you're going to find it. It's going to be pretty easy. You just have to know what to look for. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a few more questions. We are nearing the end. How can one practice being creative in the first place? Since we already touched base on this a bit, maybe expand it.
Yeah, I think it was a Albert Einstein quote that being creative is have a sense of humor. Have a sense of humor. Look at the world and observe things, but try things. And here's the biggest thing I think you can do for yourself. Just get a little piece of paper or post it and write the 2 words "what if" and stick it right there, on your board, because Being creative just means you're going to be asking questions. Well, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or I know in a lot of the studios, what they'll have the story departments, they'll bring in improv actors, stand-up improv folks, and they'll get the story department to participate and to be creative in the moment, to respond to things, really rapidly. And I was working on a project, and they said, no, not just the story department. Everybody's going in, and everybody's going to get a chance, and everybody has to participate. So, like everybody else, it's a little scary, but once you get in there and do it, you realize that, there's everybody has a lot of creativity. You have a lot of creativity in you. You just have to kind of unlock that. And sometimes the prompt of somebody else's prompt or some other word or something, triggers you, and then the words just fall out of your mouth. Just happen, and they're funny, and they're, and so that's why I say, have a sense of humor, look at life, pay attention to everything around you, and then say, what if,
Brainstorm. Yeah. Okay. When trying to troubleshoot my own compositions, where should I start with? Is the next question.
I think the answer is what I mentioned a few minutes ago. Is be familiar with your components, and then you have a checklist of, okay, is it the values that are not working? Is it the shapes that are not working? Is it the color? Is it the space? Is it lacking rhythm? Do I not have a connection between the different elements in some way, which would be closure sitting in a characteristic of line? So you if you have a checklist, it's much easier to self-evaluate at those things.
Yeah. Let's see. When adding additional props to an illustration, how can one avoid creating problems in a composition that was planned in the earlier stages of a painting?
So you already have I'm trying to understand this. So you already have an established situation, and you want to add more things to it.
Yeah, I understand the question like this.
If that's
Yeah.
Yeah. If well, I guess it comes down to a question: is it a singular image, or is it a singular image, or is it actually a location, a scene that you already shot, footage in there, or you already have seen that location, now you're adding to it. Those are kind of two different things. So I'll try to answer both of them. If it's one image, it's a single image, and you're going to add more things to it, what you want to do is you want to look at add things as needed to tell your story. Okay, don't just add stuff to add stuff. Add stuff to help tell your story, or make your story clear. And a story could just be, it's a sunny day on the lake, or it's a sunny day in the park, and I want to capture this kind of feeling because this is what's going on. And so, that being the case, what do you add? How do you add it? Where do you put it? And that kind of a thing. You just want to make sure that you're putting it in, and you're arranging it in a way that it's not distracting. And the way that you do that is you want to kind of look at what's dominant and subordinate. Okay, so you have your initial image, and within that initial image, you're going to have some elements that are going to be dominant, and some other things are going to be subordinate. You want to look at what are you going to add to that, and what you're adding, is that going to compete with what's dominant? Is it going to be more subordinate elements that lead you to that dominant element? What's its function in there? How's that gonna work? So you want to think about when you're going to add something in there, what's the purpose, and what's the purpose is it going to serve by adding something in there? If it's a location that's already been established and you need to put something in, well, then you have to bring it in, at a point where you have like an emotional difference, or a different kind of a lighting scheme, or a different kind of emotional tone. you know, and then you can kind of accept things that have been added in. You just don't want them to pop in and all of a sudden show up. You need to have some kind of it needs to be at some moment in the story where it's a turning point or it's a different point of view, and then you can share something new with the viewer and they'll accept that addition.
Okay. All right, let's go a bit back to you, Bill. What is your favorite thing to sketch
Uh-oh.
when you're out and about?
Gosh. I still go to like costume drawing workshops. I like drawing people, but I like drawing people more than figure drawing. I like costume drawing because they're performing. There's more performance in there, and so it offers more character. And so you can go back to the what if. They're presenting a personality, a character, and you can take that and kind of run with it. I kind of like that kind of a situation. Gosh, I like images that I like to draw images that are situational rather than just a depiction, rather than just, okay, here's this, here's a landscape, here's a seascape, here's something else. What I'm looking for is a little bit more of an image message. If I go down to the beach and I'm going to do a seascape, okay, if I go down there, I want to really find something that really interests me about that I can tell a story about it that, is going to be a little bit more engaging, because if I get myself excited about it, then it's going to come across. If I'm successful in getting across in the image, then other people are going to feel that same excitement. So, I have a hard time saying, other than, like I said, the costume drawing. Outside of that, I like drawing all kinds of things. But the thing I like about drawing all kinds of things is finding that story, finding the thing that excites me about it, and then I can try to key in on that.
Okay. And talking about drawing while out, do you have any advice for creating a routine for drawing things while outside?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times, we get into the habit of, if you're outside sketching and stuff like that. I think about sketching differently. I think about, if you think about your, I don't like, it is sketching, but let's just call it editing. You observe and you only put down what's important. Okay. Oftentimes, if we're sketching, we use these sketchy lines, these kind of marks and stuff. And what happens when you do that is you're not really committing to the drawing. You're not committing to what's important. And you're saying, well, it's kind of like this and kind of like that, and this is kind of like this and this is kind of like that. The result is fuzzy observation. You're not really observing. You're saying it's kind of like this, it's kind of like that, but you're never committing to it. So, along that same practice of get yourself to commit to an idea. It may be right, it may be wrong. So if you're going to draw, if you're outside and you're going to draw in the neighborhood, you're going to see a couple houses and trees and things like that. Okay, well, maybe your proportions are off a little bit, but you're going to be clear about what you're putting down. If you're just using sketchy marks and stuff, then the sketchy lines you use for a bush is going to be the same as the sketchy line you're going to use as a rooftop, and the same sketchy line as a light pole. And when you do that, you don't have any distinction in shapes. You haven't made a commitment for anything. So it's useless and it's a waste of your time. So, because you're not making a commitment to something. And, and so what you want to do is you want to edit. That's really the main thing, is you want to really sit down and you want to edit and say, okay, this is what's important to me, and you put it down. So observe it and put down what's important to you.
Okay. Um, so in your opinion, who do you think other artists should check out and study?
Hmm. The best of the best. Okay. Don't compare yourself to what you see on the internet all the time. Okay. There's a lot of things that, social issues that come up about, you know, these, you look at a lot of people and they'll go, well, this is my hour sketch. This is what I did, my lunch break. This is, speed work, or this is my fan art. This is my this or that. And to a lot of people, that can be pretty intimidating. They're seeing these things and they're saying, oh, all these things. But, when you stand back and look at that compared to what's really, really great, it just pales to what is really great, what's out there, and different generations are going to look at different things and have different opinions about them. I could say, hey, look at some classic animation, and one group of people are going to be looking at things that were done in the 30s and 40s. One group is going to look at it in the 70s. One person is going to look at it in the 90s. And one person is going to look at contemporary animated films and say, okay, this is the best of the best. It's hard to kind of narrow it down. It's like, look at this, look at this, look at this. But I would just say, kind of raise your sights above what you see on social media. There are some great things on there, no doubt. I look at things on there and but I don't just clip, like, clip, like. I'll scan things, but if I see something significant, then I'll copy it and I'll put it in a folder with like type things, with similar things, because that helps me understand why I chose it, what I like about it, and when you surround it with other things that are similar, you're actually doing a little bit more analyzing and breaking things down. So it's more active.
Mm.
I think earlier on you said something about people that I admire as well, and I'll go back to Walt Disney and Don Graham. Okay, Walt Disney hired Don Graham to teach his artists. He had an alliance with someone that was opening a school, so he worked with her, and now they still now it's called CalArts, and Disney subsidizes the college still to this day. And what he did was, early on, he said, hey, I've got these world-class artists, but we're trying to invent animation, and nobody's done it before, and they're all super skilled, but we're trying to invent a new craft. And so we need a training program. We need to teach them. And so I have this. Actually, I have this, okay, before, ever, after, okay? And you can see all my notes in here. These are all the memos and all of the meetings that they had where the artists were teaching one another this craft of animation. And at the same time, when Walt hired Don Graham was, a brilliant artist, but he really understood teaching and training. And so even in the book, there's all kinds of memos between the two of them on how do you craft a training program for inventing a new art form. And it's fascinating. And I think that the thing that I admired about the Disney Studios growing up was the fact that they invented so many things. They invented storyboarding. They invented a term called plussing, where everybody has to be in line, and instead of take it in their own individual direction, they're taking the idea, sticking with the idea, and making that idea better. So everybody's making it better and better and better and better, rather than their own idea, then their own idea, then their own idea, then their own idea. You don't go anywhere that way, right? Well, they really established that concept, and that might not be in practice today, but it's a wonderful practice, and it's a wonderful thing to get everybody on board with the same thing. They invented optical printer. They invented matting techniques. They invented They invented for Fantasia. They had 5-channel sound. Stereo wasn't even invented. That's 2, and they did 5 channels on film. The soundtrack, how the soundtrack's recorded on mag tape on the strip, on the edge. All these things were invented by the studio because, Walt said, "Hey, I want to do this. Go figure it out. Let's just go figure it out." And that inventiveness was one of the big things that drew me to the studio. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't. I love the cartoons. I love Disneyland, but it wasn't my desire to do that. I really appreciated what their history of invention. They were willing to try these things and potentially go bankrupt just to make these things happen. So that to me is pretty exciting.
Awesome. Nice answer. Okay, we're at the 1 hour mark. Are you okay with taking one last question? If not, we can just wrap it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
All right. So we have a question. What is your favorite art piece behind you, and what are the stories behind some of them? You got a lot of art
Well, the one
behind
directly
you. Yeah.
this one right directly behind me, that's a print from Dan McCaw. He had given me a print that he had made, and I really love his sense of design and color and how he works with that. The other drawings up there were drawings that I had done from character models from life, and I like exploring some of those things. There's a painting this way right there, the Robin Hood type of image down there. That one was done for. I really admired N.C. Wyeth, and at one point there was a director that contacted me. I was working over at Disney Toons, and one of the directors came in and said, "Hey, I want to make a show that looks like in a Norman or N.C. Wyeth style, but we're trying to figure out what is it that makes it N.C. Wyeth, and how can you break down that style?" And so I did some research on that and breaking down that style. Really enjoyed it, and then I got a call from. I was still working there. I was working for Disney, so you can get loaned out to different divisions. And so the parks, the division that does the parks, so Imagineering, reached out to some of us and said, "We want to do a display on for Main Street, and we want to have the books that inspired all of Disney's animated films." And so, we had a list of the movies that they had made, and they showed us the original books in the library. They have all Walt's original books. I think he had 3 from Peter Pan, J.M. Barrie's books, with notes written in his own handwritten notes, and it was fascinating. But the covers were blank. They were just not that impressive. And so they said, "Okay, we need to make it a more visual presentation. So, would you do something?" And I saw Robin Hood, and I thought, "Okay, this is my chance to do N.C. Wyeth." So I did, and that was for a book cover, an idea of a book cover, hypothetical book cover for N.C. Wyeth.
Nice.
And the other painting is my daughter.
Oh, good. That's nice. I didn't know your daughter painted. Was drawing. I knew they're into sports though.
Oh, it's my painting of her.
Oh, okay. I understood wrongly.
There.
I am sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So
The rest is my research. I'll snag the books. I got a stack right here, and I got a stack over there, and whatever I'm doing, if I'm, I have a big library down in the garage, and so whatever I'm working on right away, I'll pull it up and shift things around. So
yeah, I was about to ask if those are art books behind you too. On the floor.
some of them are. Some of them
Yeah.
are. Most all of them are. But working with Marvel, I grew a section of my collection of history of Marvel comics, and some of those books too. So I was looking at them. So, and I got to say, some of the people that I had a chance to work with were just brilliant draftsmen, and you see some really strong draftsmen in some of these comics. So yeah, it was an honor to work with a lot of them. I really revere their talent. It's wonderful.
Okay. So with that, we're gonna say goodbye. Thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Bill, for answering our questions. It was very lovely to talk to you again. And yeah,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
It's fun.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.